Welcome back to the discussion on the IMEE Economic Corridor, a new corridor that was announced on the sidelines of the G20 meeting with the G7 countries, India, and 4 Middle Eastern countries participating: UAE, Saudi, Jordan, and Israel. How quickly will this trade route, alternative trade route, come up is what we are discussing with Ambassador Navdeep Suri, Mr. Rahul Chabra, former economic secretary at the MEA and an ambassador, and Somnath Mukherjee of ASK Wealth. Gentlemen, thank you for your patience. Mr. Suri, let me come to that part. The money on the table. You know, the Biden big deal was a very encouraging statement, but when it came to actually funding the talk, we didn't see much when they were trying to reform the MDBs, the multilateral development banks. Please do it without the money, was Janet Yellen's statement. So do you think money will come here?
Well, in this case, you have the advantage that between UAE and Saudi Arabia, you have two countries with very deep pockets. Both of them have sovereign wealth funds, which are worth about $1 trillion each. Europe, as well as US, have separate funded programs for building green infrastructure. So I think if the political will that was demonstrated in New Delhi is executed, then this is one of those cases where the funding per se should not be such a big obstacle. I think the challenge perhaps to have a viable project is, as was being discussed earlier, to look carefully at why the much touted train link from China all the way to UK did not really, I mean, physically it's there, you would carry some cargo, but why isn't it really working? I think the viability is going to be determined by volumes and by costs. It has to be profitable for exporters and importers to use this alternate network. And I think I would draw encouragement from the fact that for India, the GCC and the European Union are two of our largest trading partners. Yes. Our trade with GCC is about $200 billion, and it is very substantial with Europe as well. Now, if some of that trade gets carried on this new highway, so to say, then it has a much better chance of becoming financially viable. But volumes will determine the viability. I think that's critical. That to get the shippers to start using this corridor instead of just depending upon the Suez Canal, and for that, the economics is going to be the driver, not just the geopolitics of it. I think the geopolitics is important. Connectivity that brings countries together reduces tensions. And it certainly draws Israel, and incidentally, Israel, even though it wasn't present in Delhi, has been the most enthusiastic advocate. It's even been calling it the peace railway line, or the peace rail corridor. So they see the geopolitical impact of this, but the economics will drive it, I think.
Okay, fair point. But exactly the point that you're making, that the countries have to stay together. The G7's political unity is perhaps now a foregone conclusion. In the Middle East, there could be shifting loyalties as governments change. What would you say, Mr. Chabra? Do you think that we are being too ambitious? Governments can change, or is the political will confirmed across generations?
No, I mean, I think when governments change, major projects or major commitments of this nature, they don't change. Once given and the ball is set rolling, you don't roll back on issues as big as this. So that would be a sort of not really the done thing. And the other part to remember is that it's not just a purely trade and a goods corridor.
What is the historical evidence, sir? What is the historical evidence? There is a reason why the biggest cities in the world are coastal cities. London, New York, Shanghai, Hong Kong, Singapore, Malacca, you name it. Because you don't have to go through landed corridors. Because shifting loyalties of landed kingdoms don't alter these trade routes. Now we are taking a major risk of going through land, so changing governments. Ambassador Suri, you're putting your hand up. Do you think that this is a danger?
I just wanted to say that the House of Saud in Saudi Arabia has been around for 100 years. The Nahyan family has been ruling UAE for about 70, 80 years, certainly, and longer than that, actually. The same goes for the monarchy in Jordan. Israel is the only country which actually sees changes in government. The others are long-term stable monarchies, long-term stable monarchies where you don't really anticipate anything dramatic happening in the short or even the medium term. And in Israel, I think there's a very strong bipartisan consensus about it.
Okay, Mr. Chhabra, if you can complete your point. I mean, my only point is that
money. To continue on the list.
Yeah.
Sorry, and just to continue on the list of countries, US, India, the democracies, and France, Germany bought into the project. So I don't think there are going to be changes because the government changes.
I agree.
Yeah, and you were talking about the money.
Yes.
The money would also come in once it's sort of established as a bankable project because of these other aspects of it to be also added. The green hydrogen line, that's important, the high-speed data cable, the electricity cable. So there are other aspects of it which may be just peripheral, but to be also. So once it's absolutely clear that it's going to be a bankable project, there's no lack of funding availability. As the World Bank president has also said, that the private sector really looks for bankable projects. If there are projects, there is enough funding going around, trillions of dollars of funds available. But it's really the shortage of bankable projects.
Okay, to put that to you, Somnath. Repeatedly, both Mr. Chhabra and Master Suri are pointing out it's not just a rail link, sea links. It's also an electricity cable, a hydrogen pipeline, and a high-speed data cable. So do you think that there are several sectors in India that could become bankable, investable, even more investable? What are the sectors you would look at?
Oh, absolutely. Only yesterday we had India and Saudi Arabia sign off another MOU about an undersea electricity cable to be constructed between the two countries. So it only increases the viability of the project, and depending on which stage we are in of the project, the opportunities for investors can range from EPC contractors to financiers of the project, to telecom companies, to high-speed data networks, equipment providers. So the opportunities can be fairly significant and substantial. But micro opportunities about investors at this stage are again too early to gauge. From an investor's perspective, this is a long-term opportunity to keep a sharp eye out on, simply because it has the potential of being extremely large as well.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, it would be exporting hydrogen. There are so many companies that have already thrown their hat in the ring. So, of course, it can be a big deal. But I have just 30 seconds for both of you ambassadors to give us some idea of comparison with Chinese. Ambassador Suri, ultimately, China it's one government giving directions to its public sector units to go ahead and do the BRI. And even then, there were limits. And of course, China is now a weaker economic force. But here, there is a multitude of voices agreeing on projects. I mean, it doesn't look like it'll be as efficient as BRI. What do you think?
I think the fact that China alone was putting money into those BRI projects meant that financial viability was never the criterion. It was politically driven. I think in this case, if you are able to establish the financial viability of the trade route, then you are on stronger ground than a project that Xi Jinping has conceived with his team without as much as a buy or leave with the other countries and without looking at financials first.
Okay. Well, Mr. Chhabra, if you also can bolster my confidence. My diffidence is June 2020, it got announced in the G7. Nothing much happened. Again in 22, they call it the PGII. And they've given a little bit to Bali and India, but nothing much. So, it's the initiative actually is about 3 years old already. We have not seen so much on the ground. Are you still confident that this can be a rival to the BRI, to the World Bank, and be a huge infrastructure funder?
you think nothing much happened, but let me tell you, a lot of background work would have happened to have reached this level. It just doesn't happen. You just don't land up and sign an agreement like this.
Okay.
So there were several meetings at several levels, including at the National Security Advisors level. So there's a lot of background work that has gone in to reach this level of understanding. So now it's a clear, sort of different sort of template from a model which is much more coercive, not so transparent, not of that quality, high standard. So now here is an alternative template.
Okay.
And you have the largest economies, the largest democracies in the world putting this together as a grouping. So I think it's really something, it's of great significance. And it should now start rolling much faster, that we've got the political in place. That is the hardest part always.
Okay.
Getting these countries, look at the sort of countries, Israel getting together with Saudi and the UAE,
Absolutely.
Jordan being thrown in, and Italy having to sort of backtrack on its commitments to the BRI. There was a lot of things happening in the background before you could actually put a structure like this in position.
Okay.
So now things will start rolling. Now it's the easier part,
Okay.
so to speak.
Okay. Oh, deeply encouraged by what you all say. Ambassador Suri, Mr. Chhabra and Somnath, thank you very much indeed for joining me in this conversation. Of course, it's preliminary, but as Mr. Chhabra just pointed out, the difficult part is over and the projects will start flowing more rapidly as time comes. Eagerly looking forward, a new trade route. This is historic. Let's hope it moves with Godspeed. Wrap up on this edition of Indianomics. Thank you for watching.